Mario Kart World's world might be one of the most detailed Nintendo has ever made, and it makes absolutely zero sense. For instance, how does anyone even get to this island in the first place? As there's no airport to be found anywhere. Now sure, there is the occasional seaplane here, but only a handful of people can ride in those at a time. And don't even think about taking the train, as it's entirely domestic. Remember, this is an island after all. So what about traveling by ship, like an ocean liner? Well, the problem there is not only do we see zero evidence of any large ships in this world, but none of the docks are even big enough to accommodate them. Which kind of draws into question, why did they even build a giant drawbridge in the first place? Especially since the only ships we see that are tall enough using it are these short-range ferries and low-capacity sailboats. And is it really worth inconveniencing all of these drivers just so a handful of people on their boat can get through? But then again, we clearly don't have the brightest bunch working this bridge in the first place, as they regularly try to close the bridge as a ship is still passing through, only catching themselves at the last moment. So it shouldn't be too surprising that even though there are warning lights underneath the bridge, they never actually use them. Even though, weirdly enough, if you show up at dawn or dusk, you can actually see the lights reflected in the water as if they were on. Spooky. As it turns out, one of the only real ways on or off this island is by space travel via DK Spaceport. And I cannot imagine that's economically feasible for most of the people living here. And speaking of which, where do all these people live anyway? Outside of the one city, the only other places where people might actually live are Salty Speedway, Thought Guy Bazaar, and a smattering of small houses scattered about. There's no way that's enough to support everyone that we can see that exists in this world. Which, now that I think about it, maybe that's why an unusual amount of people carry sleeping bags around with them in this world, as there isn't room for them otherwise. Talk about a housing crisis. Now, something else that occurred to me is, how does anyone here get power? Because even though power lines can be found everywhere, they never actually connect to anything. The only way this makes sense is if the power is rerouted underground. Similarly, there's only a single set of these much larger long-distance power lines in the entire world, which also don't connect to anything. But even still, there's a much bigger problem here, because unless Bowser's Castle nearby is secretly a geothermal power plant, there's no power plant in this entire world. I mean, how are you supposed to keep your Nintendo Switch 2 powered without a power company? Well, it just so happens that I have the answer right here, being Belkin's Charging Case Pro, the sponsor of this video. As this baby has been tailor-made to address every possible need you could have when traveling around the world with the Nintendo Switch 2. Not only is it built like a tank, but it'll guarantee that your Nintendo Switch 2 is always ready to go thanks to its ridiculous 10,000 mAh battery built in. That means it can charge your Nintendo Switch 2 from dead to full almost 1.5 times. And check this out. The battery indicator on the front ensures you always know how much power you have left to game. And even when it's eventually recharge time, it couldn't be easier thanks to the quick access port that lets you power back up without even opening the case. Alternatively, you can keep on playing while charging your Switch 2 thanks to the case's hinged design. And you can rest assured that your Switch 2 will be safe while it's charging thanks to the premium materials it made the case out of. It feels extremely sturdy. On top of that, this thing's got room for everything else you would need too, including holding 12 games, a pocket for accessories, and check this out, because within that bigger pocket is a smaller hidden pocket for a smart tracker. So if you have one, make sure to slip it in there as you can find your Switch 2 if you ever misplace your case. And it comes in 3 different colors. I quite like the sand one myself because it reminds me of the beautiful beaches in Mario Kart World. Yeah, this is the life. Especially with my Switch 2 carrying case, which you can pick up for yourself from Belkin using my link in the description below. And speaking of power sources, what the heck is powering these long-defunct cars over at Wario Stadium? Maybe they're hooked up to Belkin's Charging Case Pro too? Then we have the matter of these drop-off mailboxes you'll find scattered around the world, which seemingly makes sense except for the fact that there's no other evidence of any kind of postal service anywhere in this world. Not only are there 0 drop-off boxes in Crown City, but there's no mail trucks or post offices at all. So if no one's around to collect the mail, is there really a mail service? In fact, any kind of government service seems pretty much all but non-existent in this world. There's no apparent garbage collection, which might explain why there's trash bags all over the streets. There's no fire department, which you would think you would want in a world that has literal fire creatures. And even the few police cars we see don't seem to give a crap about anything. Like, how is this legal? Here, they can't even enforce the time limits on their parking meters, as literally everyone in this city is expired. So if there's no laws here, that might explain why multiple intersections can have green lights in every direction at the same time. And also why the railroad crossings don't actually work. I even caught a criminal red-handed. While I was driving around, this blue car pulled in and the blue toad got out. That's when I noticed this shy guy crossing the parking lot. Nothing too suspicious yet, but then I saw him scoping out the cars. He briefly checks out the tanned one before moving on to Toad's blue car. Yeah, he just hopped in and drove off. He even has the nerve to drive right by the car's owner. I wonder what he's thinking right now.
Hey, there goes my car.
Yeah, in this world, Grand Theft Auto seems to be a way of life. And that got me thinking, what would this world be like if it had actual law enforcement like another open world game series?
Code for 148 North St. Andrews, follow her now.
Yeah, not in this world. Though perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised when the speed limit is literally
ludicrous speed!
Speaking of car-related matters, have you noticed there are 4 types of drivers, being Toads, Shy Guys, Yoshis, and Koopa Troopas? But weirdly, while you can encounter 3 of those 4 outside of their cars walking around, the same can't be said for Koopa Troopas, which you'll never see roaming about on foot. Furthermore, although Yoshis can drive, they only ever drive their own food trucks. And speaking of cars, there are of course gas stations scattered throughout the world. The only thing is, no one ever pulls up to them, besides me for this video of course. And speaking of things that take coins, why did the vending machines randomly distribute items without taking payment at all? And more alarmingly, why are they sentient? Next, we have to talk about Toad's factory. On the one hand, they appear to be a highly prolific producer, based on the sheer volume of branded shipping containers they have lying around here. But on the other, how do they actually ship them? Well, you might think it's by ship given the fact that the entire factory is surrounded by water. In fact, there's even a drawbridge in the area too, which makes sense if they're expecting large container ships to come through. Except, like before, we never see a boat come through big enough to warrant it. In fact, the only ones that come through here are these little kayakers and jet skiers. But maybe the container ships are just on an infrequent schedule. Even still, there's 3 other big issues at play here. 1, there's no obvious loading dock. Now there is this inlet surrounded by cranes, which maybe if you squint could look a bit like a loading dock, but even if so, there's still issue number 2, being that there's no good path for a large ship to even get here in the first place. The only river that leads to the ocean is not only downhill the entire way, but also has rocks sticking out throughout the path. And 3, there's still no evidence of any large ships, including container ships, anywhere else in this world. Except for over at Wario Shipyard. And based on what happened to the ships here, maybe it's no wonder there aren't any other large ones around. So the only other options available for Toad's factory are to ship either by train or by truck. And to be fair, there is both a nearby railway and highway. But once again, there's no cleared loading area for either. And even putting that aside, we never see these shipping containers anywhere else in the world. They're just sitting at Toad's factory. Do they actually have a distribution plan? Maybe that's why they have to stack these boxes literally everywhere, including underneath the nearby freeway. Though, based on the fact that the Toads in the security office don't even have a door to go in or out, perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised by Toad's factory's lack of distribution. Also, did you catch that they appear to be floating too? What are these, magic mushrooms? And that's where we're going to cut it off for now, but rest assured there's a lot more weird stuff going on in this world that makes 0 sense. So if you want a part 2, let me know in the comments below. And if you found anything yourself that doesn't quite add up, I want to hear about it. And with that, thanks for watching, and of course make sure to click the subscribe button and ring the bell for tons more from us and everything else Nintendo too.